What do you believe happened to Emma Richter? Did she become the victim of some unknown illness? Was she secretly taken away to conceal the truth? Or was it a genuine supernatural phenomenon? Write your version in the comments. I read them all, and the most intriguing ones will appear in the next episode. Year 1873, Berlin. In a house on the outskirts of the city lived a girl whose mere existence defied science. People came from neighboring districts solely to look at her. Some crossed themselves, others turned their faces away in terror. For Emma Richter did not feel pain at all. Her story began quietly, with a cold that would not go away. At first, her parents thought it a common ailment, but when the second month came, they realized Emma did not cry. Not from fever, nor from injections, not even after falling down the stairs. Her knees were covered in blood, and yet she looked at her parents as if nothing had happened. The doctor, summoned for the first time, remained silent for a long time, then took her pulse and declared, "The child is healthy, but she does not react to pain, not at all." The rumor spread across the entire district. Some claimed it was a divine gift, others a curse from the devil. Neighbors began whispering, crossing themselves, and one old woman even brought a bundle of wormwood to the family's doorstep to ward off evil spirits. Her parents tried to keep their daughter hidden, but it was impossible. Curious crowds gathered at the fence, each wanting proof with their own eyes. "Show her!" boys shouted, throwing pebbles at the windows. The father would storm out, curse, and drive them away, but the rumors only grew. One evening, Dr. Mueller entered the house, a young physician intrigued by unusual cases. He asked permission to conduct a few simple experiments. The parents agreed, hoping he might find a way to help her. The doctor gently pricked her with a needle. She smiled. He pressed a glowing coin to her skin. The girl barely frowned, but did not withdraw her hand. "Incredible," he murmured. "I've only seen this in textbooks." But the most terrifying event came in the spring. Emma stopped breathing. It happened suddenly during a meal. Her mother screamed. Her father went pale, and Mueller, who happened to be nearby, rushed to the girl. Her heart did not beat, no pulse, nothing. 3 minutes passed, 5, and then, suddenly, she inhaled sharply as though awakening from a nightmare.
"She's alive!" cried her father. The doctor stood frozen, trembling between horror and astonishment. "This is not possible," he whispered. "Impossible!" The newspapers wrote about the girl who tricked death. Doctors and priests alike began to arrive at the Richter house. Some wanted to save her soul, others to study her body. But with every passing day, the strangeness grew. After that episode, Emma seemed transformed. She became quieter, hardly spoke, and her eyes fixed constantly on some empty spot. At times, her mother caught her staring at the corner of the room and shivered. At night, her parents began hearing strange sounds, at first faint creaks, like footsteps across the floor, then muffled laughter. Yet whenever her father went to check, no one was there. Emma lay with her eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. "Do you see someone?" her mother whispered. The girl remained silent and then suddenly smiled. "They don't want you to worry." They. That single word froze her parents' blood with fear. The next day, they summoned Dr. Mueller again. "Hallucinations," he said, though his voice betrayed uncertainty. "Possibly the result of her unusual condition. I must observe her more closely." He asked permission to stay through the night. When darkness fell, Mueller sat in the corner of her room with a lantern and notebook. Emma slept. Around midnight, the doctor heard a faint tap. He thought it must be rats in the attic, but the sound came again, closer. He raised the lantern and froze. Dark patches appeared on her girl's arms, bruises as though someone had gripped her wrists with brutal force. The doctor rushed to her side, took her pulse, steady, breathing, calm. Emma did not even wake. The next morning he showed his notes to her parents. "Impossible," whispered the mother, clutching her head. "It is a fact," Mueller replied sternly. Forces unknown to medicine are acting upon her body. The rumors spread even faster. That very afternoon, a crowd gathered at the fence. People carried candles and crucifixes, shouting that the girl must be taken to church. "She's cursed," a neighbor cried. "You'll condemn our whole district," shouted the men.
Her father, furious, went out to face the mob. "She is my daughter," he exclaimed. "She is guilty of nothing." The crowd retreated, but only for a time. A week later, Pastor Langs arrived at the house, a stern, rigid man with severe manners. He demanded to examine Emma. "The Lord warns us through her body," he said, crossing himself. Mueller tried to protest. "She is not possessed. She is a medical phenomenon." "You are too arrogant, doctor," the pastor answered coldly. "There are times when science must bow its head." Emma sat on her bed, watching them both. "They argue," she said softly, "but they don't understand." "Who are they, Emma?" said the pastor. The girl smiled. "The ones who come at night." At those words, her mother fainted. Mueller insisted on conducting more serious investigations. He wrote to the university, and a couple of weeks later, a delegation arrived at the house. 2 professors, a student, and a photographer, assigned to document everything. They set up their equipment, placed candles, and began their observations. The first night passed uneventfully. On the second, Emma suddenly sat up in bed and began to whisper something. The student, seated closest, exclaimed, "She's speaking in Latin!" The professor frowned. "Child, who taught you that?" "No one," Emma replied with another smile. "They told me those words." The trembling photographer took several plates. On one of them, developed later, a faint silhouette could be seen behind the girl, resembling a tall figure. It became a sensation. Newspapers ran headlines, "Berlin Girl Communicates with Spirits." The Richter home turned into a pilgrimage. People came from other cities, bringing gifts, money, letters. But alongside the fascination grew fear. One night, someone hurled a stone through the window with a note, "Get her out before it's too late." Her father began sleeping at the door with a shotgun.
Yet fear began to grow, not only among neighbors, but within the parents themselves. One morning, they found Emma crouched in the corner of her room. Her hands were scratched, her nails stained with blood, as though she had been clawing at the wall. On the plaster appeared strange symbols. "She couldn't have done this," whispered the mother. "She was asleep." Mueller stayed silent for a long while, then finally said, "We must take her to the clinic. It has become dangerous here." Emma looked at him and said quietly, "Don't take me away. They don't want me to leave." The decision was made. Emma would be sent to the university clinic. Her mother wept, her father clenched his fists, but he knew they could no longer endure this at home. Dr. Mueller personally accompanied them, promising, "There she will be safer. We can observe her constantly." The clinic was a massive, cold building with white walls and endless corridors. Emma was placed in an isolated room with barred windows. "It's necessary," one of the doctors explained, "not to keep her in, but to protect her from the crowd." The first days were calm. Emma spoke little, only watching everyone with her large eyes. Medical students whispered as they passed her door. "Look, that's her," one said. "They say she died and came back," another replied. Dr. Mueller recorded his daily observations. "Normal temperature, stable pulse," he wrote in his diary. "But the absence of pain reaction remains." On the third night, the calm was shattered. Near midnight, Emma abruptly sat up in bed. The nurse on duty screamed, "My God, her eyes, they're glowing!" The duty doctor rushed in, lit the lamp, and froze. Symbols were appearing on the girl's skin, as though carved from within. This is impossible," he murmured. "They're appearing before our eyes." Emma looked at him suddenly and whispered, "Don't touch them. It's a warning." At that moment, the room's light went out. The lamp sparked and died. The nurse shrieked. Someone dropped a tray. Panic spread through the corridor. A minute later, the light returned. Emma lay in bed as though nothing had happened. The symbols on her skin slowly began to fade.
"Write down everything," shouted the professor as he burst into the room. "This is a historic moment." The next day, Pastor Lange came to the clinic. "You are playing with fire," he warned. "This is not an illness, but a test." "It's a phenomenon," the professor snapped. "We must study it." Emma remained silent, then suddenly laughed. "They laugh at you," she said. "They think you understand everything." "Who are they?" nearly shouted the professor. "The ones who come when you sleep." That night, the professor could not rest. Something moved in his office. Books fell from the shelves, and on his desk he found a slip of paper bearing the same symbol that had appeared on Emma's skin. The following days became a series of endless experiments. They examined Emma, took samples, tested her reactions to cold, heat, needles. She endured everything silently, without complaint. "It's as though she isn't here," whispered the nurse, "as though her mind is far away." But one day, everything went out of control. During another experiment, the professor tried to cauterize her skin with a red-hot instrument. "We must confirm she feels no pain even under stronger stimuli," he explained. The moment the metal touched her skin, a sharp noise rang out, like glass breaking. All the windows cracked simultaneously. The lamps went dark, and in the darkness, heavy breathing echoed. Emma screamed, her first scream in all that time. "Stop!" she cried. "They're angry!" Suddenly, the door slammed shut by itself. The nurse and the doctor were trapped inside with the girl. Outside, students tried to force it open, in vain. Inside, furniture toppled, screams echoed. When they finally broke the door, the room was in chaos. The table overturned, instruments scattered, and on the wall appeared new symbols, huge, as though clawed into the plaster. Emma sat on the floor, hugging her knees. "They said, 'This is the last warning,'" she whispered.
After that incident, even Mueller began to wonder, were they truly dealing with a mere medical enigma? The press exploded again with headlines. "The girl performs miracles. Ghosts in the university clinic." Crowds of believers gathered at the gates. They prayed, sang psalms, begged that the girl be handed over to them. The clinic's administration began fearing a riot. "We cannot keep her here," the director said. "This has become dangerous." "But we stand at the threshold of the century's greatest discovery," the professor protested. "Or perhaps at the edge of a catastrophe," Pastor Lung replied grimly. Emma spent more and more time in silence, staring out the window. At times she murmured, "Soon, very soon." Spring in Berlin was cold and rainy. The day it all happened, the city was swallowed by a violent storm. Lightning tore across the sky. The clinic's windows rattled with thunder, and the staff were more tense than ever. Dr. Mueller insisted on conducting one final series of observations. He felt he was close to the truth. "If we stop now," he told the director, "everything we've learned will be lost." "And if we continue," the director replied grimly, "we may lose more than knowledge." Emma sat on the bed with her arms crossed. "They are here already," she said quietly. "Who?" asked the nurse, dreading the answer. "The ones who always come when there's a storm." The first thunderclaps coincided with the flickering of lights in the hallways. Students exchanged uneasy glances. Some murmured prayers. In Emma's room, it was cold, though the windows were shut. The doctor saw vapor rising from her breath. "Her temperature is dropping," he said, touching her forehead, "as if she isn't alive." Suddenly, an uproar was heard outside. A crowd had gathered at the clinic's gates. Neighbors, believers, the curious. They shouted, demanding the girl be handed over to them. "Let her out," they cried from beyond the walls. "We will save her soul." The director ordered the guards not to let anyone inside, but the uproar only grew louder.
At that instant, the lights in the room went out. A cracking sound echoed as though something had snapped. A bolt of lightning struck so close that the windows shuddered, and at that very moment, in the center of the room appeared a faintly glowing circle. Emma raised her head. "They've come," she said, standing up. Dr. Mueller rushed toward her to stop her, but an invisible force hurled him backward. The student near the door shouted, "Look!" The symbols that had once appeared on Emma's skin now gleamed on the walls, weaving into intricate patterns. The room filled with a strange sound, a low hum, like a chorus chanting in an unknown tongue. The nurse fell to her knees and began to pray. Emma took a step toward the glowing circle. "They are calling me," she said. "Emma, no!" Mueller cried. But it was too late. The floor shook, and for an instant, every lamp in the clinic burst into blinding light. The crowd at the gate screamed. Some began to flee. When the glare subsided, Emma still stood in the same place, but her eyes were closed. For a moment, she seemed dead again. Mueller rushed to her, took her pulse, faint but present. Emma opened her eyes and murmured, "They left me, but not for long." From then on, her condition worsened. She scarcely rose from bed, fell into long silences, and sometimes whispered only, "Soon, very soon." The crowd outside the gates grew ever more aggressive. One night they broke in, and only the guards managed to hold them back at the threshold of her room. Pastor Lange tried to calm them. "This is a trial for all of us," he cried. "But if we commit violence, we doom our souls." The doctors were at a loss. "If we keep her here," the director said, "they'll tear us apart."
"If we release her," Mueller replied, "we lose the chance to understand what all this has been." Meanwhile, Emma began drawing symbols on the wall again, this time with charcoal, as though racing to finish a message. One night, she called Mueller and showed him the drawing. "It's a door," she explained, "and soon it will open." The doctor shuddered. For the first time, he thought the answer he had sought so desperately might be more terrifying than all the mysteries of the world. That afternoon, the storm returned. The wind shattered one of the windows, and icy air swept into the room. Emma rose from the bed, staring into the distance. "They've come for me," she said, "but this time, they're not coming alone." The storm raged all night. It seemed as though the heavens themselves were taking part. Rain lashed the windows, wind howled through the vents, and the corridors were filled with a dreadful stillness. Emma did not sleep. She sat on the floor, hugging her knees, whispering under her breath. Mueller entered, sat beside her, and gently asked, "What are they saying?" The girl looked at him. "That everything has already been decided." He tried to smile, though his heart pounded so hard it seemed to echo through the corridor. "Emma, you're not alone. We are here." "You cannot save me," she replied, "but you can remember." At that moment, lightning struck so near the walls trembled. All the clinic's lights went out. In the halls came shouts, hurried footsteps, the sound of things falling. The door to her room burst open by itself. Outside stood everyone, guards, nurses, Pastor Lange, the students. All eyes were fixed on Emma. And then something happened that was seared forever into the memory of those present. In the air appeared a glowing design, the very same Emma had drawn on the wall. It floated in the middle of the room, spinning, transforming into a shape like a lock.
Emma stood and took a step forward. "Open," she commanded. A creak resounded, like ice cracking. From the design poured blinding light, and everyone felt the ground tremble beneath their feet. Some fell to their knees, others screamed. Pastor Lange crossed himself and began to pray. Emma walked into the center of the light. For an instant, her figure turned transparent, as though she no longer belonged to this world. "Do not be afraid," she said softly. "They are not here for you." And suddenly the light vanished. The room sank into darkness. When the lamps flickered back on, Emma was gone. The floor where the glowing design had been was scorched, as if struck by lightning. The symbols on the walls had faded. Mueller stood in the middle of the room, unable to believe his eyes. "She is gone," he whispered. The pastor placed a hand on his shoulder. "Perhaps they simply took her to a place where she no longer feels pain," he said. The newspaper spoke of the case for months. Some claimed it had been a phenomenon of collective hypnosis, others that Emma had been secretly taken away to conceal the truth. Some believed she had died. But those who had been in that room swore she had vanished before their very eyes. Mueller kept his notebook until the end of his life, never able to explain what had happened. At times, he would show Emma's photograph to his students and say, "Here is the enigma that science could not resolve." And on the last page of his notebook, there was only a single line: "They promised to return." And now the question is for you. What was it? A rare illness? A case of mass hysteria? Or an encounter with something we cannot explain? Write your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe, for what is coming will be even stranger.